Now, let's look at some of the accessory structures. The salivary glands, parotid, the side of the face, right there in front of, below and in front of the external ear. Submandibular, you know that is under the jaw, the lower jaw. Sublingual, your word elements tells you that's under the tongue. Now, saliva is mostly water. It is mucus, and it's got digestive enzymes like amylase and lipase. So ase means enzyme. So enzyme to digest starch. And starches are carbohydrates. And lipo means fat. Now, the pharynx, the throat, is used by both the respiratory and the digestive. You already know the three parts of the pharynx, the naso-oro-laryngopharynx, and you know which one is most superior, which one is most inferior. Swallowing, the soft palate and the uvula close up off the nasal cavity. The tongue forces the food down into the throat. The epiglottis covers the voice box. And those peristaltic movements, those wave-like movements, push food down the esophagus into the stomach. So the esophagus is a collapsible muscular tube. Gets food from the stomach, sends it, food from the pharynx sends it to the stomach. And this tube actually has to pass through an opening in the diaphragm to get to the stomach. Now, you must know these sphincters and parts of the stomach. So the stomach. So here's a very simple illustration. The fundus is the rounded dome-shaped portion of the stomach. And again, fundus, we're going to use that word, in the female reproductive to talk about part of the uterus, and again, it is the rounded dome-like portion. So the fundus is the round portion on top, body in the middle, no stretch there. But the pylorus is the base of the stomach. Now, we have to have openings at the beginning and at the end. And because we don't want the food just to pass right on through the esophagus, directly through the stomach, directly into the intestines. We have sphincters. We have muscular rings that are supposed to stop backflow. So now the cardiac sphincter, now that term cardiac sphincter is falling out of favor. Average Joe and Jane think it has something to do with the heart. No, it just means that it's close to the heart. So the term LES is the more preferred term, lower esophageal sphincter. So know what that sphincter is and where it is, and also know, you still need to know it is cardiac. You still need to know that term because that term is still used. And the pyloric sphincter is at the base of the pylorus. So right where the small intestine joins up. Now, it takes about 2 to 6 hours for food to move through the stomach. Rugae, ridges on the roof of the mouth, folds in the lining of the stomach. The gastric glands secrete juices that are made of hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes. Again, if someone has ever been unfortunate enough to have to regurgitate, vomit, suffer from emesis, you know that those stomach juices that are thrown up can kind of bleach-like in a way. I mean, it's acidy. It's going to eat out the color, and if it's not gotten rid of quickly. Now, so the food that's been swallowed mixes with the secretions in the stomach, and it becomes chyme. It's time for chyme. Now, some gastric juices for your information only: pepsin, hydrochloric acid, and mucus. Now, again, hydrochloric acid, that's acid. Acid eats away at things. And so in order to keep our stomach from digesting its own self, we need this mucus lining, which is alkaline. And alkaline is a base. And you may remember that acids and bases are opposites of each other. So that mucus making that alkaline layer is critical, so we don't get ulcers in the stomach. All right, so let's look at some of the structures that we've got. Now, let's look at the lower, the small intestine, also called the small bowel. Now, this is an important thing. The stomach is not the chief organ of digestion. The small intestine is the chief organ of digestion and absorption. This is where the digestive process finishes. So nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream, and the small intestine contains these villi, these little finger-like projections which help absorb the nutrients. Now, once all the nutritional value has been absorbed out of that substance, the solid waste that's left over passes into the large intestine. So, digestion begins in the mouth, digestion begins in the oral cavity. The chief organ of digestion is the small intestine. Now, you must know the pieces of the small intestine. You must know which is technically most superior, which is most inferior. So think of DJI, duodenum, jejunum, ileum. So the duodenum, the duodenum, gets bile from the gallbladder and liver. You need bile to digest fat. And it receives the chyme from the stomach. The jejunum just is kind of like the connection. It's like the hallway between two things. The ileum, E in the middle, connects to the large intestine at the ileocecal sphincter. Again, we need a muscular ring, a sphincter, a valve to keep that once the chyme has turned into solid waste and goes into the large intestine, we don't want it to backflow back into the small intestine. So the ileocecal sphincter. All right, so there you go. So now, so the small intestine, called small in comparison to the large intestine, small as in width. We actually have 20-some feet of small intestine, but the small and large just comes to the width, the diameter of the thing. Now, the large intestine is for solid waste transport. The cecum is the first part of the large intestine. Cecum and ye shall find, the first part of the large intestine. Now, attached to the cecum is the appendix. The appendix. An appendix is a blind sac, meaning there's one way in, there's no way out. And there's no known function. Now, there are some scientists looking into this. They think they may have found a reason for people to have appendices, and time will tell on that. But the appendix, it hooks onto the cecum. Then there's the colon, then the rectum, which stores the feces, and then the anus is the ring out. So yeah, the colon, okay. Just like the cerebrum is the brain of the brain, the colon is part of the large intestine. But sometimes when people are talking about large intestine, they use the word colon. But colon, technically, but the word colon doesn't include the cecum and the rectum. So just be careful. There's a little, so am I asking about the technical divisions of the large intestine versus a generic term for the entire large intestine? So now in this case we're looking at the technical subdivisions of the colon, and that's broken into 4 parts. So ascending, transverse, descending, sigmoid. So ascending is going up, transverse, across, descending, down, sigmoid, S-shaped. And so there you go. So the cecum and ye shall find, the first part of the large intestine. There's the appendix, the little blind sac. And then ascending, transverse, descending, sigmoid, rectum, and then anus. Now again, splenic flexure, what organ do you think that's close to? And hepatic flexure, what organ do you think that's next to? So cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and then out the anus. Makes up the large intestine. So again, the anus is the opening in which feces is eliminated. Nice word for feces. Nice word for the solid waste is feces. I'm sure you know a lot of impolite, disrespectful terms for feces. Defecation is the medical term for expelling the feces. A nice average Joe and Jane term is BM, a bowel movement. So defecation, bowel movement. Now, the anal canal, there's an illustration of that goober.